I was asked to represent some kids in some breaking story of kids being molested and hauled to the White House and other places, and I thought it was nonsense, and I said publicly when I was confronted on the issue that if I even believed one of these crazy things, I'd be the first one to stand up and do something about it or say something about it. One of the kids contacted me from prison, a kid named Paul Benassi, where he'd been locked up.
Now, to be clear, the Republican Party, which you'd been the head of in the state, actually had you go out quoting, because you were saying you didn't believe it, so they go, okay, yeah, he's with us. Go investigate it for us, Senator.
A satanic group which planned to use the dead boy in some sort of ceremony.
I mean, Nero did stuff like this. Elites throughout history are into this. Is this like a rite of passage or something? Because for the rest of us who are normal, this is so alien, it's hard for us to even mentally get our minds around it.
I think there is a network, strange as this may sound, a network where maintain control of your network and make sure something doesn't go wrong. You have to have certain people compromised or to a position where they have to cooperate or do what you want. And I think this is one of the most powerful techniques that's been devised, use of particularly pedophilia and this type of thing.
That's what I've read.
What mankind's always thing that from the moment Adam was there or whatever, sex seems to be one of the most controlling things.
We're joined by Tom Flacco, and I really respect Tom. Tom went to many of the 9/11 hearings of the congressional and the little blue ribbon whitewash committee that was set up. He's broken major 9/11 stories over and over again. Really powerful stuff, just sticks to what he can prove. And I was surprised when I saw his website, when I noticed that Paul Watson had linked to a story about Tom Flacco on PrisonPlanet.com. Headline, photographer tied to child sex ring arrested after Thompson's suicide. Now, we had one of Hunter S. Thompson's friends on a few weeks ago who was one of the last people to talk to him, who wrote an article for the Globe and Mail, a major respected paper in Canada, and he said that, yes, Thompson had told him that I'm on to this story about 9/11 being a government inside job. I'm going to write an article about it. He'd written some about it in one of his last books. I'm into this stuff about government, underage sex slaves. And I'm talking to this guy on air, and he's going, yes, yes, yes. And he basically paraphrased Thompson in his last article as telling him on the phone that, they might kill me over this. And then, folks, again, I only stick to what I can absolutely, totally prove. And the New York Post reported, top gay porn star, headline, servicing members of Bohemian Grove. That's in my new film. I've got Parade Magazine, Spy Magazine, where it admits bussing in male prostitutes. I mean, $2,000 an hour, $1,000 an hour in the 80s. To, quote, service the elite, and that AIDS was a problem. That's all in the new film. It's also in my Dark Secrets Inside Bohemian Grove video. And I've got the article from the late 80s out of the Washington Times. Underage callboy tour of the White House, midnight tour. I mean, I've got all this, and I don't want to believe it. And I also know the globalists are masters and again, we don't even know who these globalists are, of all these witnesses and people. We know that people like Tom Flacco are doing the best job they can to analyze this. We know great Americans like Senator John DeCamp, who was hired by the Senate basically to go disprove the savings and loan scam where they went in and found, this Larry King character, no relation to the Larry King on CNN, Black Larry King. And that was all true with the kids, and that was really going on. The head treasurer for the Republican Party, and it led to what was described as Bohemian Grove and a lot of scary stuff. But then you've got these children who are witnesses, and, I've had John DeCamp on, and, he's covered this, but he's been very careful about it as well. But really, Tom Flacco, great to have you on, TomFlacco.com, Flacco's FLOCCO.com, or link through at PrisonPlanet.com. But, Tom, good to have you on with us, my friend.
Yes, Alex. It's this was a tough story to write. I had this court testimony, as you can see. If you read it carefully, it's a kind of magazine length.
But well, let me just stop you first. I mean, Tom Flacco. Why is Tom Flacco, who writes for a whole bunch of major publications, WorldNet Daily, you name it, over the years? What are you doing now? Getting off into this stuff.
Well, it's something that I've had the court testimony in my hands for 2 years. It was sent to me, and I didn't know how to use it. I didn't know.
So you're a truth seeker, and just like with myself, this is where this stuff leads. It leads to devil worship. It leads to children.
I didn't have enough material. There was just not enough there. That was the court testimony is extremely damaging. I read through it one time when I first got it. I kind of skimmed it. I said, boy, this is powerful stuff, and it does actually mention a sitting congressman's name. And the boy that who was involved has quite a bit of credibility. You have to go and read the new edition. By the way, there's a brand new edition, 2005, the Franklin cover-up by John DeCamp.
Yeah, and the incredible part is, after these books are written, and later Barney Frank gets caught with underage prostitution ring out of his house.
Well, yeah, that
was
really,
on the nightly news.
You see, what I found to be really compelling is when the current White House, was I heard it on CNBC and MSNBC, particularly MSNBC and the Countdown Show, and Chris Matthews both dedicated a few nights covering the story. Countdown with Olbermann did it more than just a few nights, dealing with the Guckert-Gannon issue of the fact that you had a person who had advertised himself as a male escort, if you will, and on various websites.
Well, he was really like a madam. He also ran others.
Well, yeah, there are, as I say, there are many. I didn't dig deeply into this, but in terms of the issue of Guckert-Gannon on my forums, there are a lot of people posting quite a number of stories.
Yeah, this is even on MSNBC.
Right. This was on the cable, so the guy does exist. There's no question about it. And there are pictures of the president literally hugging him, kissing him. I couldn't believe the photos. I'm trying to find whether I can verify whether the photos are actually authentic.
Well, Bush has been seen kissing women and even kissing men now. Well, kissing them on the cheek, and people said, "Man, this is European." I'm not going to go that far. But what I'm saying is that this guy had access. Well, let me stop you right there, Tom. What do you mean you're not going to go this far? There's been whole news articles, mainstream, about what's up with the kissing.
Well, I mean, to me,
because that's how European men do it. They kiss somebody on the cheek, and Bush has been,
I understand all that, and as I say, he has a right to do what he wants to do. Is it strange? Though I don't do it myself, but well, whatever. But I found that that the issue of having a person with this background and then allowed to use an alias, not his real name, and be a White House reporter. And this has to be
got it linked to Karl Rove.
This has to be Secret Service approved. Well, the link there was I found an article with CBS News, and one of their reporters said that there's no way that basically that you'd have to be naive to think that the president's top advisor, the senior advisor, Mr. Rove, would not have a say or not know who this guy was and know what his background is, and whether that would cause at least an embarrassment. If it is indeed true. Well, if you see him on the websites, he's there, he's advertised, his picture's there in full living color, if you will. That was an issue. And when I started looking into that, I said, well, I started looking into the various articles and so forth, and I found when I got out my old DeCamp book and started reading that, and I got the new issue, which has even more startling revelations. They sent me a copy, and I called.
And let me stop you there again. Senator DeCamp had his investigator killed. Senator DeCamp was threatened. Senator DeCamp, was at a time the head of the Republican Party in Nebraska.
Yeah.
He went out to disprove this and found out it was true. He's never been challenged. Except one time, a Virginia TV station said he was a liar. He sued him and won over $1 million.
Right.
I mean, this guy's winning in court if you challenge his book.
Yeah, he would be the first lawyer I would attempt if I were you or me or any other news reporter. I would ask for John DeCamp to defend me because he knows the case better than anybody else. and actually he's.
Well, I've read your article. You're just going off court record and mainstream news, and that's
exactly,
the point. I don't want to, Tom. I don't want to in my brain admit this is going on, but there's no way to ignore it.
Well, you saw the title. This was more than a title. What I found is one of the perpetrators, alleged perpetrators, the guy that was said by all the reports that was taking the photographs. He admitted that he took the photographs. He took 20 to 30,000 photographs, and that Mr. DeCamp, who I called John DeCamp and talked with him in 2 separate interviews, albeit one of them was kind of short. But I did talk with him and got some updates and some information.
Yeah, we've had him on. Hey, you know what?
I know you have.
We ought to try to, in the next hour, we ought to try to see if we can get him on.
Yeah, he's, as I said, I read the transcript of your piece, and there are a few interesting things which I was not aware of, and I read the article, and I found that, there's no way that the top White House advisors wouldn't know this guy's background. Why would they let somebody have, access to the White House?
Well, also, the neocon website he ran is linked to GOP funding.
Oh, I know. It's all there. And everybody's saying, well, what's the big deal, Well,
it's their fake reporter.
Well, now the big deal is this. I asked Mrs. Gosh, who is the mother, who met her son when we figured out the ages and so forth, and there's all kinds of, and I referred to this and put some pictures up there, but I didn't take a stand myself.
Her son disappeared when he was 12.
Right. Johnny Gosh disappeared. He was serving papers on a Sunday in 1982, I believe it was, and he just disappeared. And Paul Bonacci said he participated in the kidnapping by luring this child over next to a car where they quick snatched him and drugged him, and he was gone. And mother, Mrs. Noreen Gosh, said she saw him met with him when he knocked on her door one night when he was about 27 years old. Whether there have been other encounters between the two, she wouldn't say. And she's very, I'm not sure. I asked her specifically, well, is Johnny Gosh, is your son, also this guy, Guckert Gannon? And she said she's not sure. She doesn't have enough evidence.
It's a spitting image.
And, yeah, there's a lot of that, And then I found out that the guy went to the same college that I went to. And I know, although I have no problem. God's people are God's people. And if a person has that kind of a sway, they're homosexual, do I approve of it? I don't approve of it myself. I don't criticize it. I don't say, that it's something that they can't do. I would like to come out and say, oh yeah, I'm going to be holier than thou. But do I feel?
Yeah, but that's all a side issue.
I don't have a right. I don't think I have a right to. What I have a problem with is the children issue. If people are working with children and abusing children,
they need to be executed.
That's a terrible thing.
They need to go to prison or for the rest of their lives.
Michael,
Stay there. We got a break. We're talking to Tom Flacco. A detailed 12-page report on Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. This is sick stuff, but somebody's got to expose it. We'll be back. All right, during the break, I got Senator DeCamp's number. I have it in my computer. I called him. He just had major surgery a week ago. But he is coming on the broadcast. He's coming on in the next segment with Tom Flacco. And so this should be very interesting. Tom, look, we cannot ignore the admitted male prostitutes, the admitted underage. We're talking 16 years old. Barney Frank. I mean, how could Barney Frank, the congressman, how could he have underage male prostitutes, that's pedophilia, folks, in his penthouse with a call boy ring being run out of it? I mean, this was all over the national news years ago, and he never went to jail. You see, this shows the double standard. And he needs to be in prison. And this is scary stuff. But, Tom?
I was running it also out of Chevy Chase Elementary School, one of the guys in his penthouse. That was just unbelievable stuff. I mean, I knew about this a couple of years ago, too, when I looked into it, and I didn't report it. What makes it an issue now is that they are making a tremendous story out of Michael Jackson and the pedophilia. They're basically dragging 70- and 80-year-old priests out of retirement and prosecuting them and throwing them into prison. And you have all these children, who are testifying and coming forward, and you've got even adult people, photographers, investigative notes, videos. There's a lot of material out there. And John told me that the law enforcement officials are still looking for the pictures. Well, that's a tip-off. Why would they be looking for pictures and evidence if this case is supposedly
Well, here
closed.
on the network, I heard a prominent former New York detective on Jack Blood's show Friday talking about all this stuff. And how every time, I mean, he would go to apartments with 10 children in it, and it would always lead back to government. And he'd be told, you're off the case. He was on a commission for the governor after he returned. I mean, this is huge.
Well, unless all of this stuff it'll be out there for a few days, and then it dies down, and then it goes away, and nobody, because the people who have control. How can we expect United States senators to force a federal prosecutor to indict some of their own members?
Well, for the people
it's not going to happen.
For the people that just joined us, it's not debatable. Top male porn stars serving Bohemian Grove members. New York Post. We're talking mainstream news, not debatable. Dozens and dozens and dozens of reports. I got stuff going back to the 80s, long before DeCamp wrote his book.
Right,
Spy Magazine, Parade Magazine.
I know.
So this stuff is. I mean, this is definitely, just the homosexuality is enough because they claim they're Christian conservatives, but they're involved in this.
It's very tragic, and what got me started when I talked to John, I said, well, here's this. I thought to myself, here's the story. John DeCamp told me that they arrested the photographer a couple days after the suicide of Mr. Thompson. And that is really kind of strange. And where was the media on that? Why wasn't that reported? Here you had a guy who in federal court testimony, and I quoted it over and over again, the testimony is absolutely incredible, and I think that's what makes a story like this fly, because this was allowed in a court of law. But the other issue is that Judge Urban, why didn't he say, hey, wait, you're kidding me. Let's subpoena the pictures. Can you identify any of these pictures? Are there senators? Are there congressmen you can name? I would like to hear their names. Can you identify them by the pictures that we show you? If you don't know their exact names, can you recognize the faces? None of this was done. There were some pictures shown to indicate that that he was on planes, he was with Mr. King, he was that kind of thing. But there were many pictures, and he was involved in it. There are other people. He knows who the other people were that were also taking pictures.
Well, it's like Abu Ghraib. The government decides to let CBS News run about 15 pictures, but I watched the senators walk out. They were given an afternoon to look at over 2,000 photos and over 100 videos of just but then they came out and said it's indescribable. We now have the Army report. We know what that is. Objects dripping with battery acid. That's all I'm going to say.
I had to leave so much out of this story because, frankly, Alex, it was gross. It was disgusting. And it was just stuff that I didn't want to have printed.
Well, the point is, this is what the elite's into, and what we've got to watch out here is we got to ask ourselves about Gannon. He's in their hip pocket all this time. Now he suddenly appears, and I don't know. We just got to watch Gannon closely because why is Gannon still alive?
Well, the other issue with this is I don't take a position on it one way or another because I got to go with Mrs. Gosh. Has she met this guy? I would like to see the two of them meet and have her ask. But
I'm talking about the news articles where Gannon says reportedly in major publications that he's friends with Bush. And he's coming out saying this. I mean, how is he still alive?
Boy, I'll tell you what, isn't it? It's a thorny issue, and you don't know where to go with it because
we haven't given folks a lot of details. We will when we get back with Tom Flacco and Senator John DeCamp on the other side of this quick break. TomFlacco.com, and don't forget my website, PrisonPlanet.com. These people we're talking about are just the scum of the earth. We'll be right back. All right, we're now joined again, as I said, by Tom Flacco, who's written a detailed 12-page article about the disgusting underbelly of the New World Order, and Senator John DeCamp, a man of unbelievable courage. And let's go ahead and bring Senator DeCamp up first, because Tom's been on with us the last 20 minutes. Senator, good to have you on with us.
Howdy, and how are you?
Good, sir. Just in a quick thumbnail, tell us who you are, how you got involved in this investigation, please.
Okay, my name is John DeCamp. I'm a lawyer in a little town called Claytonia, Nebraska. It used to be Lincoln and big cities, but I moved here kind of for family safety about a dozen years ago after I wrote a particular book called The Franklin Cover-Up. I had been a senator for 16 years. In fact, believe it or not, I'm the first, last, and only one you'll get to meet in your life who won election without ever setting foot in the United States of America. I ran the entire campaign from Vietnam. I was a combat infantry captain over there, and one crazy bet and whatever led to another, and I filed, and, well, it's a long story, but I ended up winning and served then for 16 years after I got out of the legislature. And, yes, I was extremely controversial. In fact, the World Herald, the major newspaper of the state, labeled me most powerful and effective and blah, blah, blah in the history of the state and on and on. And they hate me just as much today now as they love me then. That's because I kind of put some of their folk in prison on this whole issue we're talking about. But anyway, so about a dozen, God, it's 15 years ago now, I was asked to represent some kids in some breaking story of, kids being molested and hauled to the White House and other places. And I thought it was nonsense, and I said publicly when I was confronted on the issue that if I even believed one of these crazy things, I'd be the first one to stand up and do something about it or say something about it. One of the kids contacted me from prison, a kid named Paul Benassi, where he'd been locked up.
Now, to be clear, the Republican Party, which you'd been the head of in the state, actually had you go out quoting, because you were saying you didn't believe it, so they go, okay, yeah, he's with us. Go investigate it for us, Senator. So you did, and tell folks what happened to one of your investigators.
Well, I wasn't a senator at the time, but
I know, but they hired you to do it.
Senate committee was a string of, I don't know how many listed in the book, 15, 20 individuals who were involved, one after another. The closer they get to something, the quicker they end up dead. And in this case, the investigator hired by the Senate committee was uncovering one thing after another, and kids were talking.
He had just talked to you, though. He said, I've got them.
Got in his little airplane to come home from Chicago on a game with his 8-year-old kid, and it blew up in the air, and blah, blah, blah. The rest is history. Anyway, you're still there?
Yes, sir.
So, as I say, I got more than deeply involved. I wish, to be honest, and this sounds terrible for anybody to say, but I wish I'd never heard of Franklin. I wish I'd never heard of any of the people in it. I wish that I still was as naive and believed as innocently as I did before this all happened, and I ended up getting deeper and deeper involved. I wish none of it were true. Unfortunately, the opposite is true, and it is true. And that's why I ended up writing the book. My best friend, my confidant, my kind of, everybody has a godfather in life, right? Well, mine was a guy named Bill Colby, William E. Colby. And you may remember Bill as the head of the Central Intelligence Agency. He also ended up dead out of this. And I had doubts about saying this publicly ever before today, but, they found him floating in the Chesapeake Bay, and no official reason for his death. But I guarantee on my life, it wasn't accidental and was involved. But anyway, so he was the one that gave me the advice to protect myself and my family. The best thing I could do, quote him, was, hey, tell the story, and there's no benefit in doing yin.
That's what Jennifer Flowers said when she got on Hardball, and she said Bill Clinton's killed over 100 people. And he said, why are you saying this? And she goes, because I've been told by writing this book and telling the truth, I'm protected. It's when you have the knowledge and don't share it that you get killed.
So Colby told me, so I wrote the book, and the rest is kind of history. As you know, one thing after another that at the time I wrote it seemed unbelievable has come out and been pretty well verified over and over. I think I was the first one, for example, to document in some detail some place called the Bohemian Grove and what happens there, and specifics and dates and places and personnel, and that's just one example.
And what you to tell in the book, no one had ever gotten footage out. You had just gotten this from witnesses. I snuck in and got the footage.
That's my understanding, yeah. So anyway, that's how I got involved, and now I see things have blossomed up again, and I hope it'll all go away, and I don't know which way to turn or react as a result of the latest development. Yes, I was the one that first, in my book, and then through my work, uncovered, located the missing Johnny Gosch and that whole thing there, and his mother has become one of my closest friends.
Well, let's shift gears. Let's shift gears now into 2005. There's this gentleman named Gannon, fake reporter, funded by neocons. Turns out he's a coal whore. That's admitted, and just incredible access to the White House, more than most of the reporters. And in comes Tom Flacco, who's a great investigative reporter. Tom, come on in here. I mean, where should we start telling the next chapter in this nightmare?
Well, I think that one of the key issues, as I said earlier, that you've got John DeCamp, who I'm just honored to be with him, and I respect everything he's done. I've read his book just about cover to cover, and it's a very disturbing story. And I've been working on this for 4 to 6 weeks. I talked to John a couple times about a week and a half ago, and I talked to Mrs. Gosh. So I did talk to the people who are who I would consider to be the most informed, of anyone on this case, because they really literally had to live it. So I feel that the issue of the Guckert-Gannon situation, I talked to Mrs. Gosh, and she said she still has to see more evidence. I would ask, my question to her or to John would be, is there any possibility of she tried to contact this man, because the ages do match up. According to they like to say that Gannon says he's older, but on his website he advertised that he was the exact same age in 2000 as Johnny Gosh would have been, which was... And
also all of, his real name, the name he's using now, the alias he was using, and Johnny Gosh, it's the same initials.
Well, I will say this, John doesn't know this, I'm sure, but I did find some other websites, and some people checked that he went to Fairview High School around the Pennsylvania-Delaware border, and right near there is a state university called Westchester State University, and James Guckert did graduate. They said that there was a Guckert who graduated from Westchester University, and interestingly enough, I have a bachelor's degree from that same
Let's just stop
university.
right here. How did the Gannon thing, because I hear different reports, I see different reports, how did it first surface? And then where did it first surface that he looks like Johnny Gosh?
Well, that came to on all kinds of, on my forums. There were many postings. People started posting. All of a sudden, the internet just came alive with stories, with pictures, photos. People started digging. You know how when you've got thousands of people just digging up stuff, and they're finding out where the person went to high school.
But that's where we got to be careful, because the globalists love to take real news, real stories, try to insert something that isn't true, and then later bring that out and discredit the whole thing.
As I say, I've not taken a position on.
Neither have I.
I don't know whether he is. All I do is there are striking similarities.
Well, let's ask Senator DeCamp. Senator DeCamp, what do you think of all this?
I think I'm learning as we go. I have had an awful lot of people from across the United States call me, give me opinions, and so on and so forth. Here's what I will tell you. When I finished writing my book, it came out, first thing that happened was a group of lawyers, very powerful lawyers, got together because I named names. I was very specific. If you remember my book, I don't talk in generalities.
You don't mince words.
Anyway, and they said, we will sue him for libel and slander, and he will be the most destroyed lawyer in this country, and on and on and on. I got up and answered at the same press conference, hey, if anybody had said any of these things to me, I would sue them. So unless I can prove the one thing I have to prove, which is an absolute defense no matter what, and that is truth. Truth is an absolute defense in libel. Any lawyer that is liable.
And you've never lost a case. You've proven it in court, and it gets worse. When a TV station said you were a liar, you sued them and won.
Okay, then that's when I sued them, because they wanted to say I was a liar. I was going to say, hey, I'll call your bluff.
And see, that's what scares me.
That named Bob Kerry, who ran for president, you may remember, had been, along with Wadman, police chief of Omaha, former police chief, deeply involved in this thing, had been in a town called Wilmington, North Carolina, where one of them became police chief and the other was campaigning. Anyway, they used the forum there, the TV station, which was Great Atlantic Telecast Company or something, a long time ago, so I can barely remember. But anyway, and they said certain things, and I said, hey, man, I'm suing you, and I sued them, and they did their own investigation, and surprisingly enough, within a reasonable amount of time, part of the deal was they had to apologize 2 times in a row on their evening news, and they paid me damages, which, of course, I'm not allowed to, quote, disclose in a private settlement. So, yeah, there was one.
But that's over. I mean, I know you can't, but it was over $1 million, Little Bird told me?
No, I won $1 million on behalf of one of the children. We're still trying to collect that.
That's in my story.
Now, let me stop you right there. You're talking about the Senator Kerry who was involved in Operation Phoenix.
Yeah.
Again, a lot of this trails back to Vietnam.
Yeah. This is kind of sensitive and painful for me to talk about, because I was up to my eyebrows in Operation Phoenix. I was a captain over there, specially assigned to Colby for development of the Phoenix program, and I used to try to defend it, but I'll be honest with you, in all good conscience, I can't say anything other than it was an assassination program today, even if I want to tell myself otherwise. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. The question was, what do I believe today? Based on the information I have seen, I've received, calls made, information from talking to people like Noreen. Ted Gunderson just left here yesterday. He came back right away and spent about 2 weeks with me, even though I was in the hospital here. But anyway, I think there's a real serious question as to whether this particular individual may indeed be Johnny Gosch. I do remember a conversation one time between Paul Bonassi. Bonassi was one of the central characters, being taken to the White House and so on and so forth back in my original book. And Paul once was talking to Johnny's mother, as I recall, and he told, and Johnny Gosch had made contact with Paul, believe it or not, and some of these other kids that were involved. Anyway, and he explained why he could never come out. He'd been involved in such things, snuff films and everything else, that once you're in that, you can't come out. And he explained to him, hey, he shaved his head. He said he's changed his face a little. If he were standing next to you right now, Noreen, you wouldn't recognize him. So my reasons for saying what I say next are not because of his look or what I've seen in the papers. What I'm going to say next is I believe there's between an 80 and a 90% probability that it's correct, that is, but nothing I say is based upon the looks or the appearance.
Now, I've read reports that Mrs. Gosch has talked to him. I mean, number one, is that true? Number two, what does he say?
If Mrs. Gosch has talked to him, has talked to who?
Talked to Mr. Gannon.
Her son.
If Mrs. Gosch has talked to Mr. Gannon, then she has not confirmed that with me yet, and I think if she had, she would have confirmed that.
Okay, because those reports are out there. All right, so we can discount that for now.
She hasn't. I'm saying I think she'd tell me absolutely.
Has anybody been able to talk to Gannon?
I certainly do not know.
John, has he talked to her son since the 1997 visit when he was approximately 27 years old? Have there been any other contact?
I think you should ask her that question.
Okay.
Well, let me get this out here right now.
I feel I have a certain...
Gannon supposedly talked to the Moscow Gazette, which is a pretty respectable paper.
Yep.
I went and looked at some of their back issues, and they're saying he's coming out with a tell-all book. Have you guys seen that other places?
I have heard that I heard this was going to happen a week ago, yes. And it apparently came out on the front page of something called the Moscow Gazette here within the last couple of days. Yes, I had been advised that was going to happen, and I kind of...
Okay, here's the question, then.
So I was surprised. I think that tends to verify some things.
Yeah, and again... And in that report and others, he's not saying that he's this Johnny Gosch. What he is saying is that he was good buddies with the president and others, and that right there would bring down this administration.
Yeah.
The issue, I think, Alex, the issue here is not so much because it's a tremendous embarrassment for a mother. I can just think if it was my child that was involved in this kind of a thing, and all this had happened over a period of time. How do you explain this? And the issue is why, with his background, was he allowed to have a 2-year pass, and how does that relate to what went on in the past?
Yeah, we'll get those answers from Senator DeCamp and yourself. We'll bounce it around when we get back. Folks, you do not want to miss the rest of this interview. Started out trying to disprove something and found out it was true. And for 15 years, his book has stood there and stood the test of time and has been really best-selling by all gauges that are out there. And unfortunately, I went and researched things that were in his book. I personally went places and, videotaped the satanic ritual at Bohemian Grove where they have the effigy of a child, and they burn it. And then I found a photo they released in 1909 of Bohemian Grove members standing around a small black child tied down to a board. Now, that was released to the University of Berkeley, California, which is kind of like their unofficial mouthpiece. I mean, I wish this wasn't true. And regardless of these new developments, we know where there's smoke, there's fire. There's a lot of smoke here. We're trying to find out just how big the fire is and trying to get through the smoke and the fog of war to get the specifics and the details. We've got to be careful. But my question to Tom Flacco, but first, Senator DeCamp, before we start the next hour and get into the details of the story, and, of course, we'll plug the book as well and to tell you about Tom Flacco's site. But before I do that, we know this stuff's going on. A lot of it's out in the open. They've been caught doing it. Barney Frank with the underage people in his apartment, is a call boy ring, and that's ABC News. What is wrong with the people running our country? I mean, how is this going on? Why are they into this, Senator?
Alex, please listen and please don't interrupt. I'm going to tell you something now. While you were having your commercials, I listened to a couple voice messages I had that I've been waiting for. What I told you before, I now in a little bit repudiate. I told you that I thought it was 80 to 90% that was Johnny Gosch, didn't I?
Yes.
I now changed that. I believe I'm going to move it up to 97.5%, okay? I'm going to give you some additional information. You make your own conclusions and judgments, but everything I'm telling you can be verified. And I don't want to be involved in this. I'm just giving you information you can follow up. The moment, literally, after this Gannon was exposed, so to speak, you know that about 4 other major events happened. One of those was a chap named Hunter Thompson. Remember? Mr. Hunter Thompson was a key character in my book and also the director of snuff films and participant in things at Bohemian Grove. You notice he blew his brains out 2 days after this character, what's his name, was arrested, right?
Yes.
Okay, within about a day after that, or about the same time, another central character, again from my book, but also in the whole Franklin thing, and this whole thing, who actually went to prison for some time, being Larry King. He was the central character, remember? His private photographer. He got busted. He'd been out on the streets living in Nebraska, fine guy living upstanding. He got busted and was hauled off to jail in a hurry, and house, everything he had was seized, and so on.
For
and so
what?
forth. What?
For what? What did they say?
Oh, supposedly for not registering as a sex offender in a particular county he had been in or something, but he had registered to the best of my knowledge. I do know this. Ted Gunderson then flew back here, and you know who Ted is, and he did put up, I was hauled off in the emergency wagon 100 miles off to a hospital in an ambulance because I got paralyzed and couldn't move anyway, but I'm out of the hospital now. But during that time then, Rusty got bailed out by Ted, and that hearing is coming up, I think, tomorrow on something other. And anyway, another thing, there were at least 2 notable figures in Washington, and I'd rather somebody else give you their names because I don't make a mistake. Noreen can give you. People who had dealt with her, contacted her, claimed they were with the CIA back during the height of the Johnny Gosch thing. They suddenly get busted and arrested for, quote, pedophile stuff and so on. So I think this may extend deeper and broader and whatever than somewhat. And as I say, I now have moved my opinion up based upon some of the other information I just got in the phone call that was left. But
we'll be right back.
Big Brother, mainstream media, government cover-ups. You want answers? Well, so does he. He's Alex Jones on the GCN Radio Network. And now, live from Austin, Texas, Alex Jones.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, into hour number 3 on this unbelievable Monday edition. We're talking to Tom Flacco, investigative journalist, award-winning, written a huge 12-page report called Bless the Beast and the Children. And photographer for White House sex child ring arrested after Thompson's suicide. And it just goes into the bowels of all this evil. We're talking to Senator John DeCamp. The reports have been out there that this Gannon character may be this Johnny Gosch who disappeared when he was 12 years old back in the early 1980s. What we do know is that Gannon was a male prostitute, that Gannon ran a porn website, was basically like a madam. We do know that he was given specific special access to the White House. We do know that he was good buddies with the president. I watched the body language on the news piece that showed Gannon asking him questions at a press conference. It was very interesting. I mean, it's the way I'd look at a girlfriend if she was asking me questions at a press conference. I mean, folks, you know, a picture tells a million words. Well, this video tells a lot more than that. We know New York Post reporting that they bus in male prostitutes, you know, top gay porn stars, to, quote, service them at the Bohemian Grove. We know, I mean, again, I have articles from the 80s from Spy Magazine and major publications about, the homosexuality going on at the Grove, the male prostitutes. This is all in my film Dark Secrets Inside Bohemian Grove, made 4 years ago. So we're about to break here, but I wanted to bring up Tom Flacco. Tom, just that amazing revelation that Senator DeCamp gave us, upping it from 80%, 90% to 97%, that this Gannon character is Gosh. Senator DeCamp hadn't been wrong about anything. I mean, his book stands the testament of time. Your comments?
Well, yeah, as I say, I read the book, and it just maybe just about, I would say I've read about 85 to 90% of the book. It's just incredible, and I put a link up with the price, the $12.95, $4 for shipping. Send an email to John's office as per the back of the book. I put the email in the story, so you could just, But I
mean, comments on what he's been saying. I mean, comments to him.
Oh yeah. Well, as far as my interest in the thing is, you're breaking some new ground. As you know, I led. If you've read the story, I don't know if you've read it yet, Mr. DeCamp, but I led in the first paragraph of the story. That to me, the story was that right at the time of the suicide, a couple of days later, the photographer linked in court testimony, federal district court testimony, to Larry King, and the case was picked up for allegedly a variety of things. Could you expand a little more about what happened to Rusty Nelson? You said his house was when he was busted, everything in his house was seized. You're saying that is that what happened?
This is what happened, and the only reason I know is because I was personally involved in it.
Okay, you were there.
Well, I started getting these calls from, God, it seemed like from everybody. Rusty's been picked up. Rusty's in jail. Then I got personal calls from Rusty, collect out of the jail. And he was in the Madison County Jail in northeast Nebraska. And I found out he'd been seized because supposedly he wasn't officially registered in Lincoln, which is 100 and some miles away, and had been in Lincoln at some time or other. Well, sure he was registered, but I thought, big deal.
A technicality.
Yeah, anyway. But then they hauled him down and had him locked up in tight security, super tight. I was getting, as I say, 5 to 10 calls a day from people wanting me to see if I couldn't do something. I felt I might have to end up as a witness in the case, and I was having my own problems at the time. So I told Ted, and Ted came back here and bailed him out, and they spent the last week together, talking together, and I think learning a lot. And
Ted stayed with
Ted
Rusty?
Stayed with him every minute of every hour of every day they were here together, and
he knows.
Basically debriefing him.
Yeah.
All right, we'll be back and kind of boil this down, explain this to people, and then take calls from his bed. Just had major surgery, Senator DeCamp, and we're also joined by Tom Flacco. I'm Alex Jones, PrisonPlanet.tv.
From his Central Texas Command Center, deep behind enemy lines, the information war continues. It's Alex Jones and the GCN Radio Network.
All right, your calls are coming up in a few minutes. We're now 8 minutes, 15 seconds into this third hour, second segment. We're talking to Senator John DeCamp. Wrote a book from his investigation with the state of this pedophile ring. People went to jail over it. And his book alleged all these big top figures involved, and they never sued him, they never challenged him. He had all these eyewitnesses. A lot of people were murdered who were involved in the investigation, including the state's chief investigator that was reporting to DeCamp. His plane blew up. It just goes on and on. And then it ties in with this 12-year-old boy that came up missing in the early 80s, Johnny Gosh, who's a very close look and age now to Mr. Gannon, who we know is now reportedly saying that he was relations with Bush and others. And we know he was a call boy, a call madam, really, and ran a porno site as well. And we know the neocons were funding his so-called news website, and he had just unbelievable access to the corridors of the White House more than the other reporters. So we have all this swirling around. And then in comes Hunter S. Thompson. Now, I hear from listeners, Hunter S. Thompson had seen your videos. He was writing about 9/11. I talked to one of his friends. He says, yeah, he was getting ready to do a big story on it, thought they were going to kill him. And I said, well, this was the Globe and Mail reporter, when he talked to him days before he died, was he talking about these white slavery rings, the homosexuality, the pedophilia, all this? He's like, yes, he was going to be working on that. He was going to be reporting on that. And then, of course, Mr. DeCamp, your book gets into eyewitnesses saying that it was somebody named Hunter Thompson. Who knows? It could have been somebody using that as an alias. We don't know. Or can you fill me in on this? Can you? This sounds like a CIA novel or something. It's just so bizarre.
I know that. I know we're talking about the identical Hunter S. Thompson, as mentioned in my book, and ceremonies and directing films and being involved with the kids. So there's no question in my mind about that. But what I guess I'm trying to make, a point I'm trying to make is there's about 5 events seem to all just happen, and they seem to be dominoing here at a rapid pace. For example, I had not printed my book, copy of it, for about 6-9 years. And then I was getting so many requests, I thought, what the hell? And so I reprinted the book, and it came out in the 1st of February or so of 2005, which is about a month and a half ago, right?
Right as the scandal was breaking.
Well, this was just before, when it first came out. It was before that. And it updated certain things. For example, I will read you one paragraph of the update, because I wanted to bring people up to date. And one of the central characters, you remember, of the original book was a kid named Troy Boner. Troy Boner was the government's chief witness to help lock up all the other kids. Later, he recanted, changed, and under oath testified that the government has forced him to. Anyway, so for example, I one of my updates in here, I'm going to read you one paragraph just to give you a flavor. In late 2003, Troy Boner walked into a hospital in New Mexico screaming, quote, they're after me because of this book. The book Troy was waving was this book, The Franklin Cover-Up. Boner was mildly sedated and calmed down and put in a private room for observation. When nurses came to check on him early next morning, Boner was sitting in a chair, bleeding from the mouth and quite dead. Former FBI Los Angeles Bureau Chief Ted Gunderson tried to get autopsy and other information and details that were promised him on Boner's death, but Gunderson and apparently every other entity were totally shut out of all information. No news stories on Boner's death were published in the news, despite Boner's previous front-page fame and notoriety in the Franklin case. Okay, so my book came out. Then you have the Gannon thing, and then Hunter Thompson 2 days later, and 2 days after that, whatever, Rusty gets picked up, and then Noreen Gosch can give you information about these other arrests of these characters involved back then who were pretending, or I assume they were pretending, unless they really were CIA. But I think you ought to talk to her direct about that. They get busted for pedophilia involved in that. And as they say, I don't know what's going on. I do know based upon people I have great confidence in. And I give as an example Ted Gunderson. I don't know if you remember, Ted Gunderson was originally hired. He was originally hired to prove I was full of beans. Yeah, that's right. Ted Gunderson was a former graduate of the University of Nebraska, football star and all that nonsense. And believe me, football in Nebraska is more sacred than the church. But anyway.
And that's how Ted Gunderson, went from being the former head FBI guy in L.A., he suddenly, through your case, found out about the New World Order and then all the things he's done since then.
I repeat, he was hired to come back and prove that Senator John DeCamp was full of BS and was discrediting people. He came on to me pretty strong and tough. I minced no words. I let him share everything I had, and he came out as my strong supporter. And since then, we've become very good friends, and he's become obsessed with this issue. In fact, more obsessed than I, because I've got to make a living and raise kids and worry about kids in college and things like that. So I've told you what I believe. I think there's too many coincidences going on.
Well, let me stop you right there, Senator, and I want to bring Tom Flacco in and take some calls. Again, I don't know Hunter S. Thompson, but you put this in a book. You've done this in radio interviews years ago, saying that the witnesses said it was Hunter S. Thompson. Again, you've never been sued for your book. a major TV station said you were making stuff up. You sued them and won. So you've stood the test of time. I mean, that's why we're interviewing you. And then everything you said I've been able to check out and prove, except this Thompson thing. I mean, have you ever heard from the family or explain to me why Thompson's telling other reporters that he's, quote, investigating this? I mean, why do you say Thompson?
Okay. I will only give you what I wrote in the original book. It was originally from 1990. In other testimony, Benassi said that Larry King, he was talking about a ceremony they had at Bohemian Grove, okay, where they did a snuff film, okay? In other testimony, Benassi said that Larry King was smiling and laughing the whole time the film was being shown, and that, quote, the men with the hoods, unquote, were a satanic group which planned to use the dead boy in some sort of ceremony. He also named the director of the snuff film, whom they had picked up in Las Vegas, as, quote, Hunter Thompson. And I didn't know Hunter Thompson from a bale of hay or Nikita Khrushchev or anything else when I wrote it. I wrote what the kid said, and only later did I learn the distinction this apparent individual has in the journalistic community. And as you know, when he did blow his brains out here, it's been a couple weeks ago now, right after the Gannon thing broke, when he blew his brains out, I mean, that seemed to be lead news on TV, radio, networks, and everything else for a couple days, and that kind of seemed strange to me. And one of the things they kept bringing up, of course, was his strange association in the world of the occult and blah, blah, blah. So is it the same one? I don't know. Is it the same one? Do I believe? Absolutely.
Okay, so exactly, and that stuff was in the news, and there's just so it could be somebody else, but according to
this guy was anyway. I'm not going to prove it one way or the other.
I'm trying to go off what you just said. You're saying, is this the same person? I don't know, but you're saying you think it is.
I feel even more certain that it's the same person than I do.
Well, he told a reporter that they're probably going to kill me. And then nobody saw him shoot himself.
Well, I'll quote another thing from my book. I quoted back then when asked about Gary Caradori, remember the private investigator? Colby was hired special. He had opened his own private firm, investigating firm by then. And he turned to me and he said, John, if it's done right, we'll never know who did it or whatever. Anyway, he made it very clear that,
and that was
done right, blah, blah, blah. And he used the example. He gave me a specific example. I'll give it to you right here. Probably people don't remember this, but there used to be a most famous guy down in South America named Allende, remember?
Yes.
Okay, he was prime minister or head of whatever one of those countries, Argentina or somewhere. Anyway, and the United States was at odds with him. And suddenly he ends up killed. And as Colby said, CIA took the blame for it, that everybody knew we wanted it done. Everybody blamed the CIA, world governments all around. He said, that's perfect crime, because he said, we really didn't do it. We wanted it done, but we didn't do that one. So anyway, I would say that's kind of the same way it is with some of these.
Unbelievable.
And I wish, as I say, I repeat again how we began this conversation, I wish I knew nothing of this. I wish I were the sweet, innocent, whatever.
This is amazing.
Stuff to know.
Tom Flacco, we got about 2 minutes left in this segment. We're going to come back and take calls, questions, or comments for our guest.
John, do you think that there are sitting United States congressmen and senators, or having recently retired, who are involved in this and are still sitting there even as we prosecute, Michael Jackson and drag 70 and 80-year-old priests, out of retirement and prosecute them and put them in prison? Do you think that there are sitting congressmen and senators who are getting a free pass for pedophilia?
Okay. Answer this very carefully, very directly, and as straight as I've ever answered anything. No, I do not think. Yes, I do know. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Okay, yes, you do know. Okay.
In other words, I don't think. I know.
Right.
You do too.
Now, you said another thing that I put in my story. Some of these things I put in the story, as you'll find out, because I thought they were quite incredible. Noreen Gosh had said about the plane crash that there was pornography all over the field. That's all in the story. But with regard to the photos, I had another key question to raise. Judge Erbaum, here he is hearing this incredible testimony in federal district court on February the 5th in 1999. He's hearing this testimony, and, why isn't he saying, hey, show me more pictures. I want to subpoena all 20,000 pictures or all 30,000 pictures. I want to see them all. I want to have John Benassi or Paul Benassi identify the faces, name some names. Why did what happened with the judge? I hold the judge. How is he not taking care of the children by not bringing this out? Obviously, I'm being rhetorical here, but that's my question.
All right, we got a break. When we come back, I want to take some calls, but my big question is, why is the elite into this? Why? I mean, this is it's bizarre.
Crashing through the lies and disinformation. It's Alex Jones, only on the GCN Radio Network.
Somebody's got to tell the truth. Somebody's got to talk about these issues and explore them. I know that DeCamp in 2000 was civilly convicted of kidnapping 200,000 women and children and flying them out to countries all over the world. Then they just changed their name. The UN, everywhere they go, this is what they do. It's systematic. It's what they're designed to do. My question before we go to Lance and Tom and Sean and Jeremy and Mark, and those are the 5 calls we'll have time to take with our guests. My question to both of you, John DeCamp, Tom Flacco, investigating this, but John DeCamp, the longest. Nero did stuff like this. Elites throughout history are into this. Is this like a rite of passage or something? Because for the rest of us who are normal, this is so alien, it's hard for us to even mentally get our minds around it. Senator?
I've asked myself that question more often than any other question because I've learned so much over the last 15 years since I got really up to my eyebrows in this. And then, of course, there was some pretty heavy-duty experience in politics also had kind of the other side. I think there is a network, strange as this may sound, a network where maintain control of your network and make sure something doesn't go wrong, you have to have certain people compromised or to a position where they have to cooperate or do what you want. And I think this is one of the most powerful techniques that's been devised, use of particularly pedophilia and this type of thing.
That's what I've read.
What mankind's always saying that from the moment Adam was there or whatever, sex seems to be one of the most controlling things. And
well, we know the old-fashioned mafia did this. We know that gangs have to go kill an innocent person. That's how they become a made member. I mean, this is the mode to get somebody compromised, and I agree with you on that. Tom Flacco, comments?
Well, I've thought about this myself, and I just, you wonder and you think about, where is as I said before, where is the judge protecting the kids? He gives you he awards you $1 million on behalf of your client.
But let's not look at all these hundreds of other kids. Let's not put out APBs and Amber Alerts, and let's just shut this down.
That's basically, it seems like he's shutting it down. I was disturbed by the child auctions that Paul described.
Okay,
auctions
let me touch upon one thing you said, okay? And I've got to be super, super cautious because there have been more attempts to, quote, punish me, get my bar license than somewhat since I wrote this. But you mentioned what happened to the judge, okay? The judge acted on the evidence the judge had, okay? So I can't say the judge didn't, but I could tell there was some awful hostile prejudice when the lawsuit was first filed, both in the media and otherwise. Now remember, the first named defendant, the first person named in that lawsuit wasn't Larry King or anybody else. The first named defendant, I'm going to make people mad now, was the Catholic Archdiocese of Omaha and certain Catholic priests. And, of course, they were rapidly dismissed because nobody could believe this at that time. This was the first of these kind of lawsuits.
Yeah, this is 15 years ago and nobody had heard of this.
Right, way before.
This was the first lawsuit of its kind filed in the United States where the Catholic Church was named. Now, remember, I was a little boy raised a Catholic, and I'm not going to criticize the church or any other church. All I'm saying is this was the first time in the United States of America where somebody boldly stepped forward and said, hey, you got a problem. These priests are abusing certain kids.
And since then, so much of what you put out over a decade ago has come out in other investigations.
Oh, God, yes. And how many judgments and settlements and what's happened with the church. When I first wrote it then, 15 years ago, when I filed that lawsuit in 1990 or 191, whatever it was, when I filed that first lawsuit, one in which I won the million, the first named defendant was, in fact, the Catholic Church in the Archdiocese of Omaha and certain Catholic priests. Well, obviously, it got out of the lawsuit, but the rest is history. So I use that only as an example to show how strange this all began.
Waging war on corruption. Alex Jones on the GCM Radio Network.
All right, I wanted Lance to hold, so when our guests leave us here in a few minutes, we could get into the Terry Schiavo situation, which is very serious. I don't know if you can get back in, Lance, but if you're able to, go ahead. Just try to dial when you hear somebody hang up. We're about to go to Sean, Jeremy, Mark, and Jeff. That'll be it for calls for our guests. But, gentlemen, the comment that the last caller made, the comment that John had made was very interesting about one of these editors having the same name as Gannon today. I mean, maybe that is a coincidence, but that's pretty spooky, isn't it?
Well, I don't know. I wouldn't know what to say. John probably answered that better than I could. You know, where did he get the name? You know, why did he pick that name?
It's interesting. Let's go ahead and talk to Sean in Alabama. Sean, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Alex.
Hello, sir.
I'd like to say hello to Mr. Flacco and Senator DeCamp. It's an honor to be speaking with both of you.
Thanks.
This is a very disturbing subject. Alex, you keep asking, what is it that makes these people do this? And I think the answer to it is really simple, and it was given by Christ almost 2,000
They're
years
ago. They're a society of psychopaths.
And he was speaking to the corrupt spiritual leaders of his time, and the answer that he gave is, ye are of your father the devil, and the lust of your father ye will do. He was a murderer from the beginning, and abode not in the truth, because there is no truth in him. And that's the only answer that makes any sense in my mind as to why these people do the things they do.
All right, good point. Appreciate the call.
I agree with that.
Any comments on that, John?
Pardon?
John DeCamp, any comments on that?
I'm not smart enough to know what all the answers are.
Let's talk to, up next here is Jeremy in Florida. Jeremy, you're on the air. Go ahead.
How are you guys doing today?
Good.
I was wondering, Alex, you remember the lady who called in last week and she mentioned something about there could be a possible connection between the Lefkoe murders and this whole Gannon story and then some other little elements that she brought up?
Yeah, she was saying there had been a bunch of deaths with people in and around the case, and then separate deaths and arrests being brought up now by Senator DeCamp.
Yeah, I was wondering if I can't remember, the reporter, if he found anything pertaining to that.
Tom? Well, you're saying reporter, you're talking about me about finding, what did you say? Finding?
Information pertaining to what the lady said about the Lefkoe case being related, the murders being related to the Gannon case, and so on and so forth.
No, I haven't heard anything about that. No, I have not. You know, it's what John is saying here is that there are a surprising number of coincidences. I mean, I thought that it was incredible, the issue of Troy being found. You're talking 2003. That's just that's contemporaneous here. We're talking about and the timing just before the primary season started to kick in. You know, there must have been something bubbling under the surface. Maybe Troy was,
Well, this is a good question. Why is this all coming out now, Senator DeCamp?
I truly wonder the same thing. Unless I've thought about it, I can just speculation only. What if one element is trying to compromise or get even or punish or destroy another competing element?
That's what I've been saying for 2 weeks.
The same activity, it's kind of like two people who are both thieves getting on the odds with each other because anyway.
Well, Alex, we're getting bombarded every single night on cable television with pedophilia and Michael Jackson over and over again ad nauseum. It's incredible. You have to turn your television off or flip over to some sports or something because it just gets tiring. And then they went with the Gannon thing. The Gannon thing died out there. It's just they're not able. You don't have reporters who are willing to press and who are willing to go after a story. And part of it is because they just get they write a story, and after doing it a few times, they get to say, we can't print that. We're not going to print that.
Thanks for the call. Thanks for the call, Jeremy. I mean, I'd say this. Why did Rupert Murdoch's New York Post last year come out with the headline, Top Gay Porn Star Services Moguls at Bohemian Grove? I mean, it looks to me like you've got groups within this group leveraging each other, and that's what I've been saying for 2 weeks.
Yeah, I kind of suspect that. This is John DeCamp again. The more I watch, the more I observe, the more I remember how this all worked here. It was, well, you better be careful what you say because we have, you know what I mean? And then they have to show their hand a little bit to show that they really can do some pretty bad things.
Notice where George Bush was, where his back was against the wall after a 9/11. Where did he fly? He went to Nebraska. He went to Offutt Air Force Base. And the testimony that I read...
And met with hundreds of top CEOs in a secret meeting, and they'd been there at 8 that morning before the attacks even took place with Warren Buffett.
Yeah, all the people that were part of this... it's just like a revisit of the Franklin cover-up book. It's just, why did he go to Offutt Air Force Base?
Let me bring that up. Do you have any comments on that, Senator DeCamp?
Well, the obvious one is the one that was officially given, that Offutt Air Force Base is in the middle of the United States. It's about as far as you can get, and supposedly the most secure place on planet Earth, away from Russian
Why would all those
whatever.
Why would all those CEOs be there that morning?
Well, now that's another good question, because you remember in my book, Offutt was the centerpiece of where kids were. Offutt, and quite frankly, a lot of kids out of Boys Town, was the centerpiece of where they were taken and then flown here, flown there, taken here, taken there, so on and so forth. So I have my own, I guess, opinions and suspicions, but do I have any proof of anything? No. We know the facts. The facts are this is where the president came, and we also know from my book, which I proved, I think, in spades over and over, Offutt was a centerpiece, as was a couple of places.
Unbelievable. 2 quick final calls. Mark in Nevada. Go ahead, Mark.
Hey, how are you gentlemen doing?
Good.
Alex, you left out the CEOs who were supposed to be at the World Trade Center, some of them.
Most of them were, worked in the World Trade Center, but they had all been called there by Warren Buffett for a special meeting that morning.
The genesis of the Gannon is Gosh story, it wasn't so much conjecture from the Internet. Actually, I think the one who first gave S-rated legs was actually Sherman Skolnick. I wanted to point that out. And also, Hunter Thompson, I will say this, he certainly has a very interesting profile, connections to the CIA involved with, illicit drug use and so on and so forth.
Well, it's like Timothy Leary later admitted he was FBI and CIA. We've got the head of the feminist movement, Gloria Steinem, saying she was CIA. So many of these cult figures are.
The other thing is I was wondering real quick here for the guest, John DeCamp, has he been able to locate this Lawrence King? Because I think I figured out where he's at.
I can tell you where he's at. You want to show about remarkable power? He got paroled here about almost 2 years ago now.
Yes.
He got paroled directly to a place called Washington, D.C.
And again, Larry King, not the Larry King of TV, a black Larry King.
Who was opened both the Republican National Conventions, 84 and 88. I know I was Republican delegate
tell us about this guy. I mean, he was convicted. Tell us briefly about King.
Larry King was officially labeled by the New York Times and others as the fastest rising black star in the Republican Party. He had a one-on-one relationship with Reagan and with Bush. In fact, he picked up the phone and he proved to people he could call Reagan on the phone. He also was the one who opened and sang the national anthem at the Republican National Convention in 1984 and 1988. And I repeat, I know I was there at the biggest party he ever gave because I was an elected delegate to both Republican National Conventions. Blah, blah, blah.
What about... we have the, 89 story out of the Washington Times. I have the actual copy of it, the midnight tours for the underage call boys.
That's by Rodriguez.
And then we've got, again, a Barney Frank. Who else could be caught running an underage, pedophile folks, ring out of his penthouse, and he didn't get in trouble? I mean, these people, they get caught, nothing happens.
Because of where else it would lead. It's the only thing you can think of. And, John, why weren't there more senators and congressmen named? And what about the pictures? Are we going to see pictures on the Internet? You have 20, 30,000 pictures. Let's say half of them to three-quarters of them have been confiscated by federal authorities. You told me the other day, and I put in the story, that federal authorities or authorities were looking for the photos now. Well, why would they be looking for the photos in a case that's supposedly closed, where people have gone to jail, and it's been 10, 12, 13 years, 15 years?
Okay, once again, if I say it, you can pretty well take it as true. In this particular case, I happen to have the search warrants, the copies of the search warrants, and they list all these things they're looking for. And yes, indeed, they are exactly what we're talking about, pedophile pictures and computer this and computer tapes and everything else. And they listed all the various locations where they thought they might gain access to them. What they actually found there, I do not know. I wasn't in on the search, and they definitely would not share that with me, I'm sure. But
so, in other words,
did they have a search? Yes. When was it? What, last week?
Well, we got to be careful that Gannon isn't somebody who then mixes in disinfo with all the other stuff that's true, then they bring it all out and discredit the whole thing.
That's certainly one method.
Well,
and I tend to lean, I said last week, 80% chance this is an internal war right now, and they're all holding things over each other's heads.
I think so, Alex. I think that's definitely. But what you look at, I don't think the Gannon Gosh thing is as important as the fact as what he represented, or the fact that why would you let? It's like saying that a whole pool of White House reporters who advertise themselves as $200 a day, $1,200 a day, $200 an hour, male prostitutes as reporters. What if we had 10 or 15 of them? How could you have that kind of a situation for 2 years?
And it keeps coming up over and over and over again in mainstream news. Okay, thanks, Mark. Final call. Jeff, South Dakota, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. I'm suffering brain feed here.
John DeCamp and Tom Flacco.
I lived about 2.5 blocks from Larry King up in North Omaha for my whole adult life till about 97, all right? And there was always something in the neighborhood. We knew stuff was wrong. And I moved out years ago, and I went back to Omaha for a reunion about 2 years ago, and I was with some friends of mine. And we was at an electronics store, and I brought your name up, Alex, and we got into Franklin cover-up and on and on and on. And there was a contractor next to us. You could hear he's listening to us. He said he was a carpenter. And I was like, well, that's obvious. You got all the garb for it. But he says, no, you don't understand. He says, I did a bunch of work for Larry King making a whole bunch of what he considered walk-in closets on his property. He says they were about 4 feet by 6 feet. And I'm wondering if John DeCamp has ever heard anything that or seen a floor layout for King's property up there off Florence Boulevard, North Omaha.
Paul Bonassi and some others brought this up to me. I did not put this in my book because I did not have the proof. I did not physically see this myself. I did not have anything, and I couldn't risk making any accusation that I couldn't prove in spades.
Okay, because the reason I was saying this, because when we told this guy a little more about it, because he hadn't really heard other than, the hoopla that was going on in Omaha, over the Franklin cover-up, people getting fired, cops getting fired because of Wadman's corruption and stuff. He left there visibly shook, shaking. It was unbelievable. He just got in his pickup and hauled ass, and that was, excuse my Spanish there, last time I'd ever seen that man. But, yeah, he said he put a bunch of it. They were about 4 by 6, what he considered walk-in closets with benches. So then this guy wasn't lying to me then, was he?
I do not know.
But, you'd heard
I have heard that story from others.
You have heard that?
I have heard it. Do I have the proof? No. And did Larry King invite me to look? No.
Okay, because, I just, this is something that had bothered me for years. And Mr.
But Larry King went to jail, folks. All right, thanks for the call.
Yeah, about 10 years he served, I think, 8 or 10.
John, is there evidence that this is still going on in Nebraska?
Is a pig's ass pork.
Oh, no. Oh, boy.
Well, John, I'm sure you know about DynCorp getting caught doing this stuff, right?
Correct.
That's like BBC, Associated Press. 200,000? We're talking about industrial. We're talking about, 2 football stadiums of children and women in 1 year.
Yeah, I know.
This is industrial. This is mega massive. And, they hunt in the third world.
Yep.
They don't hunt as much here, but we need to expose this so they don't hunt here. This is not a safe place for you to hunt. You pieces of trash that are going straight to Hades. That's all I can say. Well, I want to commend both of you, Tom Flacco, Senator John DeCamp. People can read Tom Flacco's detailed reportage at tomflacco.com. And Senator DeCamp, I definitely, please have your secretary send me a new copy, complimentary, or I'll pay for it if you want.
I'll get you a copy, and you can mention it on the air if you choose. And the only reason I reprinted it, I have never spent one penny, not one penny advertising or promoting the book. But we were having so many people call in back order, so I got a reprint of a few thousand and updated it with, like I said, some of the things, including some other names you mentioned here from
how many
Warren
copies
Buffett
of the book,
to whatever. But
how many copies of the original book have gone out?
About 120,000, 121,000.
That's with no promotion. And then the people don't challenge it because it's all court records and documents. Folks, please give people that are listening the address or email how they get the book, Senator.
Oh, shoot. DeCamp Legal at inebraska.com or net, which is it?
.com.
DeCamp Legal at, that's DeCamplegal at I as in Inez, inebraska.com. I know because it's on my site, and there's 20,000 people have read the story already, and so I'm promoting the email is within the text body of the story. So, John, you should be getting a few email.
Hey, I got to thank you for giving that because I didn't know.
No, well, you're going to get. I'm sure you're going to get.
I figured it's really dumber than dog poo now, and I couldn't even tell you. Yeah, that's
well, you just got out of the hospital from major surgery. John DeCamp, I want to thank you again for coming on, and I want to thank you for joining us as well. Tom Flacco will continue to watch this as it develops. I'm sure we'll get a transcript made of this interview, Tom, and I hope that you post it because a lot of vital stuff was said here.
Send me the link, and we'll get it up.
All right, Tom Flacco, God bless. And, of course, to you, too. John DeCamp, we talked off air. Final comment. You and your family are a little bit worried about your safety right now.
Yeah.
Well, God's with you, my friend. And if they kill you, people will pay more attention to what you've done.
That is not my desire.
Exactly. No, so I don't think they're going to get you.
Talk to you later. Thanks.
All right, take care. All right, there goes Tom Flacco and Senator John DeCamp. And, again, I respect John DeCamp. So much of what he said I've checked out myself, and it's true. Again, on a lot of this we just don't know, but we know there's smoke. I mean, this is smoke billowing. You can see the flame inside the smoke, and it just keeps popping up over and over and over again. And, I mean, they don't deny this stuff. I mean, Barney Frank, all of it, it's just disgusting. And these people have got control of our country, and Homeland Security and this whole system is a way to control the people. And they are the most evil scum the planet has ever seen. And they're getting more and more power. And they want our guns. And if we give up our liberties for so-called security, we're not going to get any of it. And I just beg people out there to speak out about this, to educate yourself, to get your children out of these public schools where they want to force psychologically test all of them and drug them. I mean, this is an abusive system that is teaching us how to be abusive to the children, that is teaching the society how to turn children into prisoners and put them in jail for writing the word gun in a fiction story, or to basically just destroy this society. I mean, 2/3 of foster children are on, more than 2/3 are on psychotropic drugs. I mean, just look what this government does to children. Look at how the media, it's out of control. And the globalists are the scum of the earth. It's the only term I can think of to describe them. They are the bottom of the pit of Hades. And just God needs us to stand up and defend the little ones.
Okay, it's true. I stayed up late last night, so I had half a Turbo Force this morning. The vitamins, the minerals, the amino acids. The vitamins, the minerals, the amino the vitamins, the minerals, the amino acids. The vitamins, the minerals. That's Turbo Force. 5 different types of caffeine. Doesn't have the crash. 5 different types of caffeine. That's Turbo Force. 5 different types of caffeine. Doesn't have the crash. 5 different types of caffeine. That's Turbo Force. Plant derived. 500 milligrams. Slow burn. The very best. I want a long burn. Plant derived. 500 milligrams. Slow burn. The very best. That's Turbo Force. I tell you what, I'm feeling a lot of energy. My brain's sure working good right now. Good right now. Good right now. Pre-workout, next level, Turbo Force. Turbo Force. Pre-workout, next level, Turbo. It's Turbo Force. And get the fish oil.